I didn't know the night that shattered my dignity would also open a door my wife never expected me to walk through. One moment I was being humiliated in front of strangers, the next a black car rolled up beside me and a man whispered, "Your father sent me," he said. "Deliver this when the time is right. Tonight is that time, and what I discovered next will change everything." Before I tell you the full story, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from, so I can know how far the story travels. My name is Evan Ward, and the night everything collapsed began in Brighton Harbor, Massachusetts, inside one of the fanciest restaurants on the waterfront, where my wife, Sienna, chose our anniversary dinner not to celebrate our marriage, but to bury it. The place glowed with warm chandeliers, crystal glasses, and white tablecloths that felt too expensive for me to breathe near. Her friends, Betrayal, Harper, and Elise, sat around our long table with their husbands, men in sharp suits who tossed Tesla keys onto the table like they were nothing more than loose change. Their watches were worth more than 3 months of my salary. Meanwhile, I sat there in a shirt I ironed twice and boots still aching from my shift. Because what was I? A janitor. A man who scrubbed marble floors in Riverton City and polished chrome railings for people who never looked me in the eye. Sienna leaned back, swirling her wine with a lazy elegance she never used with me. She scanned her friends with a smile that felt too sharp. "You know," she said loudly, "while your husbands are running companies and driving Teslas, mine is busy scrubbing toilets in Riverton City." Her voice cut through the restaurant. Their laughter wasn't loud, but it was enough. I swallowed, cheeks burning. I told myself she was joking. But she meant every word, she always did. I glanced at the glowing candles, pretending to be fascinated by the flames so I wouldn't have to meet the pitying eyes of the other men. But before I could gather myself, Sienna stood up. Her emerald dress shimmered, catching every drop of chandelier light as if she wanted all eyes on her. She raised her glass. "To new beginnings," she declared. I lifted my head. Surely she wouldn't. Not here. Not tonight. But she smirked, ice glinting behind her eyes. "I want a divorce." The restaurant froze. Forks midair. Conversations halted. Even the waiters paused, unsure what to do. "I'm done living with a janitor," she went on, loud enough for the tables nearby to hear. "I deserve a man who can give me the life I want. Someone wealthy. Someone who belongs with me." Her friends exchanged looks, some shocked, some smug, some satisfied that the drama had finally come. My throat tightened. I searched her face for any flicker of hesitation. Nothing. She wanted this. She wanted it publicly, painfully, humiliatingly. My chair scraped against the polished floor as I pushed it back. The sound pierced the silence like a blade. My legs were stiff as I stood, and my voice was gone, buried under humiliation and disbelief. I didn't argue. Didn't beg. Didn't remind her of the sacrifices, the nights I worked overtime so she could buy dresses like the one she was wearing. I simply walked out. As the restaurant doors shut behind me, the cold Brighton Harbor night slapped my face. My breath fogged in the air as I stepped onto the quiet sidewalk. The celebration inside resumed in soft murmurs, muffled by glass, like my pain didn't even matter. I walked with no destination, passing glowing storefronts and echoing alleys. My heart wasn't just broken. It was hollow. But the humiliation kept replaying, Sienna's smirk, her friends' whispers, the pitying glances. Years of being told I wasn't enough culminated in that one moment. The man I was, husband, brother, son, grandson, felt stripped away. And all that remained was the janitor she mocked. I reached a dim street corner and leaned against a lamppost, trying to breathe. The night smelled of rain and exhaust, and the city lights blurred through my tears. That's when I heard it. The hum of a car engine slowing beside me. A sleek black sedan stopped at the curb. Its tinted window rolled down slowly, deliberately, and inside sat a man in a dark suit with eyes as sharp as broken glass. "Mr. Evan Ward?" he asked, voice steady as stone. My breath caught. "Yes, who are you?" I managed. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into the passenger seat and lifted a thick envelope sealed with dark red wax, an emblem stamped in the center. A lion's head. A symbol I hadn't seen since I was a boy. "Your father sent me," he said. My chest tightened. My father, Grant Ward, and I hadn't spoken in years, not since I chose to walk away from the empire he wanted me to inherit. A legacy he believed I was obligated to continue. A legacy I rejected in favor of building my life my own way. "I haven't heard from him," I whispered. "Not in a long time." The man nodded solemnly, extending the envelope. "His instructions were very specific," he said. "Deliver this when the time is right. Tonight is that time." The envelope was heavy in my hand. Heavier than paper had any right to be. Heavier with secrets buried for years. The window rolled up, and the sedan pulled away, disappearing into the wet night. I stood alone again under the street lamp, the wax seal catching the faint glow. For the first time since Sienna's public betrayal, I felt something besides humiliation. I felt fear. And something else. A shift in the air, as if the world around me was waiting for what I did next. With trembling hands, I broke the wax and unfolded the letter inside. The first line nearly dropped me to my knees. I stared at the letter under the buzzing streetlight, the ink reflecting faintly against the damp night air. My father's handwriting, sharp, controlled, unmistakably his, formed every word. Evan, my son, if you're reading this, it means the moment has arrived. My throat tightened. I hadn't heard his voice in years, yet here he was, speaking to me through paper that trembled in my hands. You have endured hardship and humiliation, yet you have not broken. Tonight you stood with dignity while another tried to strip it from you. My knees weakened. I sank onto the cold bench behind me, the letter unfolding like a door into a life I thought I had lost. I watched from a distance, not because I abandoned you, but because I needed to see what kind of man you would become without my influence. Only a man forged in struggle can be trusted with the legacy I built. Legacy. The word hit like a punch to the ribs. I had walked away from my father's world, an empire I never wanted to inherit, because I believed integrity mattered more than power. But reading his words now, my certainty crumbled. Had he truly been watching all these years? Had he believed in me even when we fought? Even when we didn't speak? A metallic clink interrupted my thoughts. Inside the envelope, wrapped in dark velvet, lay 3 brass keys, heavy, old, polished from use. Each had a tag. Key 1, Hillside Grove, Virginia. Key 2, Riverton Holdings Storage. Key 3, 14W. My breath caught. These weren't random keys. These were... My stomach flipped. Properties. Assets. Something bigger than I understood. I unfolded the rest of the letter. The keys belong to the life you were always destined to claim. Do not assume they are gifts, they are responsibilities. Tests. Each one will require strength, judgment, and courage. Tests. My father had always loved tests. Even when I was a boy, he believed struggle revealed character. But then came the line that broke me. I did not turn my back on you, Evan. I stepped aside to see if you could stand on your own. You have. Now it is time to step forward. I couldn't breathe. For years, I thought he'd chosen disappointment over love. That I was unworthy of his attention because I didn't want the empire. But this letter said something entirely different. Footsteps echoed behind me, and I flinched, half expecting the man in the sedan to return. But it was only a couple strolling past, wrapped in coats, laughing softly at some private joke. Everything looked normal. Everything sounded normal. But nothing in my world was normal anymore. The brass keys dug into my palm as I clutched them tighter, grounding myself. I needed answers. I needed clarity. And I knew exactly where to find them. A taxi pulled up beside the curb as if summoned by fate. The driver leaned out his window. Need a ride, buddy? Yes, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Take me to Riverton City. The ride back to Riverton City blurred past moonlit highways and street lamps flickering like dying fireflies. I gripped the letter on my lap, reading it again and again, as if the words would reshape themselves into something easier to understand. But they didn't. They held the same weight, the same urgency, the same message. Everything you think you know is about to change. By the time the taxi pulled up in front of my small apartment building, the sky had begun to lighten with the first hints of dawn. My neighborhood, quiet, worn, familiar, felt hollow tonight, too small to contain what had happened. I climbed the stairs to my unit, unlocked the door, and stepped into the dim room. The scent of stale air and cleaning chemicals lingered, a stark reminder of the life Sienna despised. The life she had thrown in my face in front of strangers. But as painful as it was, that humiliation no longer defined me. Something else was moving beneath the surface now. The man she mocked, the janitor she discarded, was holding pieces of a world she never knew existed. I placed the 3 brass keys onto my small kitchen table. They clinked against the wood, heavy, metallic, full of unspoken meaning. Which key would I follow first? My eyes landed on the one labeled Hillside Grove, Virginia. My heart hammered. My father had grown up in Hillside Grove. It was where he started his first business. Where my grandfather raised him. Where the ward name meant something long before wealth complicated it. I reached for the key, but stopped. The letter still had one final paragraph I hadn't read. I forced myself to unfold the last portion. The moment you use the first key, everything will begin. Be cautious. The path will not be easy. But you are no longer the boy who walked away. You are the man who must decide whether to carry the Ward legacy forward or let it die with me. My head snapped up. Let it die with me? A chill ran down my spine. The letter wasn't dated. There was no indication of when he wrote it. I grabbed my phone and dialed my father's number, one I hadn't called in years. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a voice answered. But not his. "Is this Evan?" a woman asked gently. My stomach dropped. "Yes, who is this?" "This is Helen. I'm your father's attorney." "Attorney." My pulse quickened. Something was wrong. "I need to speak to him," I said quickly. "It's urgent." A pause. A long one. Then the words I wasn't prepared to hear. "Evan, your father passed away 3 nights ago." The world tilted. I gripped the counter to steady myself. "No," I whispered. "That can't. What do you mean 3 nights ago?" "I just got a letter from him, just tonight," he said. "I know," she said softly. "He prepared it well in advance. He left very specific instructions. He knew you would receive it when the time was right." My heart twisted. The man I thought had abandoned me. The man I resented for years? The man whose approval I secretly craved? He was gone. And the letter in my hands was his last message to me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch something. I wanted to rewind the last decade and fix everything. But Helen continued, her voice trembling slightly. "Evan, your father left everything to you. Every asset. Every business. Every property. He said you would understand why." My knees buckled. I slid into a chair. "Everything? Me? Why me? Why now?" My chest heaved as grief collided with shock and guilt and a dozen emotions I couldn't name. "Your father," she whispered, "believed you were the only one with the integrity to carry what he built." My breath shook. As tears blurred my vision, I looked at the 3 brass keys again. Hillside Grove, Virginia. Riverton Holdings Storage. 14W. Pieces of a puzzle my father intended me to solve. A legacy I never asked for. But one I could no longer ignore. I wiped my face, steadied my breathing, and closed my fingers around the first key. Everything in my life had just changed. And tomorrow, I was driving to Hillside Grove. The next morning, the sun rose over Riverton City like nothing had changed, but everything inside me felt rearranged, like my life had been shaken, scattered, and put back together in a shape I didn't yet understand. I packed a small bag, grabbed the brass key labeled Hillside Grove, Virginia, and started my old sedan. The engine sputtered before it caught, reminding me of every struggle I had pushed through to stay afloat. But today, that sound felt different, less like a burden, more like the beginning of something. The drive south was long and quiet. Miles of highway unspooled ahead of me, the scenery shifting from city towers to rolling fields as the world grew wider and emptier. I kept replaying the attorney's voice in my head. "Your father believed you were the only one with the integrity to carry what he built." That sentence lodged itself in my chest like a small burning coal. He believed in me, all this time. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel as emotion swelled. I had spent years thinking Henrik Ward had washed his hands of me. But now that belief twisted painfully. Had he always been waiting for me to reach this point? By the time I crossed the Virginia state line, the autumn sun had dipped low, turning the horizon gold. Hillside Grove was a quiet town, fewer than 5,000 people, narrow roads between tall pines, old barns leaning toward the earth. A place that still smelled of soil and memory. I drove past the old Ward Industries sign, rusted now, flaking, the lettering faded. It once stood as a symbol of my father's empire when he built his first manufacturing facility here. Now it felt like the ghost of ambition. My GPS guided me to a gravel driveway stretching into a cluster of trees. At the end stood a house, small, wooden, abandoned looking. My heartbeat accelerated as I stepped out of the car. The house was silent. Shadows clung to its corners, as if holding secrets. I took a breath and slid the brass key into the padlock on the front door. It fit perfectly. The lock clicked. The door creaked. And I stepped inside. Dust hung in the air like frozen smoke. The floorboards groaned under my weight. But the moment I saw the living room wall, my breath caught. There were photographs. Hundreds of them. Not framed, taped directly to the wall, layered, overlapping. Some faded, some recent. And every one of them was of me. My knees nearly buckled. Pictures of me mopping floors at the office tower. Pictures of me fixing a tenant's leaky pipe. Pictures of me laughing with my sister Tessa at her college graduation. Pictures of me visiting my mother Elena in the hospital last year when she fell sick. Pictures taken from afar. Pictures taken from angles I never noticed. Pictures tracking every chapter of my life. On the center of the wall, written in my father's handwriting. A man's value is shown in whom he becomes when no one is watching. A shiver ran through me. I moved to another corner where a table stood under a dust-covered sheet. When I pulled it off, papers scattered across the floor. Business documents. Maps. Blueprints. My childhood drawings he had kept. A journal with my father's notes. Hillside Grove Facility, restart potential, strong. Evan demonstrates honesty even under pressure. Observed again. Tessa looks up to him, good influence. Protect her. He chose dignity over wealth. That means everything. My throat tightened painfully. My father hadn't abandoned me. He hadn't written me off. He had been watching my life unfold from the shadows of this quiet, forgotten place. He had followed my journey, not to judge me, but to understand me. I sat on the dusty hardwood floor, overwhelmed. For years I'd believed I wasn't enough for him. But now I saw the truth. He had been preparing me to carry a legacy built on more than money. A floorboard creaked behind me. I jumped to my feet. A man stood in the hallway, broad-shouldered, in a dark jacket, his expression unreadable. He wasn't old, but not young either. His features were sharp, and his presence filled the room like a warning. My pulse pounded. "Who are you?" I demanded. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied me, my face, my stance, the letter trembling in my hand. Finally, he spoke. "You really are his son." My body tensed. I asked who you are. The man stepped closer, hands visible, not threatening, yet there was an authority in him that made me uneasy. "My name is Rowan Sharp," he said. "Your father hired me years ago." "For what?" He looked around the room, at the wall of photos, at the notes, at the dust-covered memories. "To protect the legacy. And to protect you." I stared at him, speechless. Rowan continued. "Henrik knew his health was failing. He knew time was running out. But he also knew he couldn't reach out to you until you became the man he hoped you'd be. Then why didn't he call?" My voice cracked under the pressure of grief and confusion. Why didn't he talk to me? Why did he let our relationship die? Rowan's eyes softened. "He didn't let it die, Evan. He stepped back because he needed you to stand without him. Power destroys people who get it too early. Your father learned that the hard way." He paused, as if choosing his next words carefully. "He wanted to see if you could build character before inheriting influence. And you did." I swallowed hard. Rowan continued. "But now, things are more complicated than you know." My pulse spiked. "What does that mean?" Rowan exhaled slowly and pulled out an envelope, thin, white, sealed with the same lion emblem my father used. "He left this with me," Rowan said. "Instructions on what comes after you open the first door." My fingers trembled as I took the envelope. Rowan turned toward the front door. "You're not safe here," he said quietly. "Not yet. There are people who thought Henrik's legacy would die with him. People who don't want you to step into his place." A chill spread through my chest. I looked at Rowan sharply. "Someone is after me?" Rowan didn't blink. "They will be. The moment they learn Henrik's son is stepping into the Empire, they'll come." I stared at him, heart pounding. "Why?" Rowan met my gaze with chilling clarity. "Because your father didn't just leave you wealth. He stepped closer. He left you enemies." My stomach twisted. Rowan nodded toward the envelope in my hand. "Whatever Henrik wrote in there, read it somewhere safe. Then decide if you're ready. Because once you open the second key, there's no turning back." He stepped outside, pausing only once. "Leave this house tonight, Evan. Don't stay after dark." Then he disappeared into the trees like a shadow. I stood alone in the silence, holding an envelope that felt heavier than any truth yet revealed. The sun was beginning to set. And I suddenly understood. This wasn't just an inheritance. It was a battlefield. And my father had known. The moment I opened that first door, the war would begin. The sky over Hillside Grove darkened faster than I expected. The trees outside the abandoned house swayed under the rising wind as if urging me to leave. Rowan's warning echoed in my head like a drumbeat. "Don't stay here after dark." I grabbed the envelope he'd given me, shoved it into my jacket, and stepped outside. The air had turned cold, biting, restless. Gravel crunched under my shoes as I hurried to my car. Every shadow looked sharper. Every rustle in the woods made my heartbeat spike. When I reached the driver's side, I realized something that sent a chill through my spine. The gravel around my tires had fresh tracks. Someone else had been here. Recently. I scanned the tree-line, hands trembling slightly, before climbing into the car and locking the doors. My engine roared to life, and I pulled away from the house with a sense of urgency pulsing through my veins. I didn't stop driving until I reached a motel on the outskirts of town, one with flickering neon lights and peeling paint. It wasn't glamorous, but the parking lot was empty, and it gave me line of sight to every entrance. Inside, I locked the door, set a chair beneath the knob, and finally opened the envelope Rowan had given me. Inside were 3 items. A handwritten letter from my father. A storage unit key. A small USB drive with a label, "Watch Alone." My breath caught. I unfolded the letter. "Evan, If you are reading this, then Rowan has judged you ready, and I trust his judgment as much as my own. What lies ahead will test you more than anything in your life. You will question me. You may even hate me. But everything I did was to prepare you. Ward Industries did not crumble when I left it. It was taken. By force. There are men who wear smiles like suits and hide knives behind their promises. You must learn that world fast, because they will come for you the moment they realize you are stepping into my place. The USB contains recordings, documents, and names. Do not trust anyone on that list. Not the charming ones. Not the ones who pretend to be your allies. They all played a part in my downfall. Some of them wanted me dead. Some still do not know I am gone. And one of them has been waiting for you. I could not stop what happened to me. But maybe I can stop what is coming for you. Be smarter than I was. And trust Rowan. He is the only man alive I would bet your life on. Grant. My hands shook as I finished reading. My father, not just distant, not just strict, had been in danger. And now, by stepping into whatever legacy he meant for me, I had inherited that danger. I stared at the USB. Watch alone. A knot twisted in my stomach. I powered up the motel's old laptop, a relic with missing keys and a buzzing fan, and inserted the drive. A single folder appeared. /Grant/final files. Inside were a handful of videos, documents, contracts, and something labeled, "Do not ignore." My pulse raced as I clicked the first video. The screen opened to my father, thin, older than I remembered, exhaustion etched into his features. He sat in the very house I had visited, that secret sanctuary of his double life. "Evan," his recorded voice began, rough and tired. "If I don't reach you before my time runs out, you need to understand what happened." He took a long breath. There was no natural decline. Someone engineered my fall. They wanted control of Ward Industries. They wanted my patents, my land, my contacts. His voice trembled slightly. They wanted everything. My chest tightened. My father leaned closer to the camera. And when they couldn't manipulate me, they turned to my son. My stomach dropped. "You were always their plan B, Evan. The moment you walked away from my world, you became a threat to theirs." He swallowed hard. "That's why I distanced myself. Not to punish you. To protect you. As long as you stayed away, you were safe." He paused, eyes glistening. "But now, they will come." The screen flickered. "Rowan will explain the rest. Trust him. Do not trust anyone else. And Evan." His voice cracked. "I am sorry for the years you thought I didn't love you. I always did. More than you know. And I hope one day, you can forgive the choices I made." The video ended with static. I sat frozen, staring at the blank screen, feeling everything inside me twist and collide, grief, anger, fear, confusion. Someone had forced my father out. Someone had threatened him. Someone planned to use me as leverage. And those people were still out there. A sudden pounding on the motel door made me jump so violently the laptop slid off my lap. My heart thundered. I stepped toward the door silently, every muscle tense. The chair wedged under the knob vibrated slightly with each knock. "Evan?" The voice made me freeze. It was Sienna. I backed away from the door like it was on fire. How did she find me? I hadn't told her where I was going. I hadn't told anyone. The knock came again, firmer. "Evan, I know you're in there," she said, voice low but insistent. "We need to talk." My pulse hammered. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I could hear her breathing on the other side of the door. "I made a mistake," she said softly. "Please. Just open the door." I said nothing. Another knock. Harder. "Evan," she repeated, but her voice had shifted, no longer soft. No longer remorseful. Sharpened. "Grant would want you to let me in." I shot through my veins. She knew. She knew about my father. She knew about the inheritance. She knew something she shouldn't. My hands curled into fists. "Evan," she said again, this time even quieter, and far more dangerous. "You have something I need." My breath caught. She knocked once more. "Let me in, or someone else will come who won't knock at all." And then, silence. No footsteps. No engine starting. No doors slamming. Just silence. Like she had vanished into the night. I backed away from the window, all instinct screaming. Someone had told her. Someone was watching me. Someone did not want me alone with my father's secrets. I grabbed the keys, the USB, the letters, zipped them into my bag, and scanned the motel room one last time. I could no longer stay here. I could no longer assume safety in shadows. Rowan's warning replayed in my head. "You inherited more than an empire. You inherited a war." And now I knew. The first enemy had already reached my door. I left the motel before the sun rose, driving with one eye on the road and the other on the rearview mirror. Every car behind me felt suspicious. Every shadow felt like it hit a threat. Sienna's words echoed like a cold whisper. You have something I need. I had no idea who told her. I had no idea how deep she was involved. But I knew one thing. She wasn't working alone. Grant Ward's enemies were already circling. As the highway stretched ahead, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Stop running. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat, pulse hammering. Whoever this was, they weren't guessing. They were tracking. By the time I reached Brighton Harbor, home, the sun had risen, casting a pink glow across the shoreline. I drove straight to my mother Marissa's house. She deserved the truth, even if it terrified her. When she opened the door, her face fell at the sight of me. Evan, what happened? You look pale. Mom, I don't have much time to explain, I said, stepping inside and locking the door behind me. But Dad left something for me. Something big. And dangerous. She stared at me, eyes wide, but she didn't interrupt, not once. She let me speak. I told her about the letters, the keys, the recordings, the enemies. I told her about Rowan. I told her about the house in Hillside Grove, and the wall of photos, and the fact that Dad had been watching me all these years. When I finished, she lowered herself slowly onto the sofa. I knew he was hiding something, she whispered. But I never imagined. I sat beside her. Mom, did Dad ever mention anyone you didn't trust? She hesitated. A long, thoughtful pause. There was one man, she finally said. A business partner named Cecil Brandt. Henrik never spoke about him after the board takeover years ago. But I remember the night your father came home shaken. Truly shaken. He said, a man who smiles too often is a man who hides too much. After that, Cecil vanished from every conversation. My blood ran cold. I'd seen Cecil's name on one of the USB documents. My father had highlighted it. Primary threat. Before I could say anything else, my mother's gaze flicked past my shoulder. Evan, get down. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I froze. A shadow moved outside the window. Slow. Deliberate. Not Sienna. Not Rowan. Someone else. I ducked instinctively as a hard knock rattled the front door. My mother's breath caught. Who? She whispered. Another knock. Louder this time. I crept forward, keeping low, and peered through the side window just enough to see the silhouette of a tall man in a long coat. He wasn't police. He wasn't a neighbor. He wasn't someone who got lost. He was waiting. The knock came again, 3 deliberate, heavy strikes. Then a voice. Evan Ward. We need to talk. Not a request. A command. I backed away, motioning for my mother to stay quiet. My mind raced, lungs tight. The man spoke again. I know what Grant left you. And I know you don't have the training he did. You can't protect yourself the way he could. I clenched my fists. He continued. Open the door now, and I'll make this easy. My mother's hand gripped my wrist, trembling. The man tried the doorknob. It shook violently. Evan, he said, almost amused. Running won't help you. You have something that doesn't belong to you. That sentence lit fire in my chest. It didn't belong to me? My father's legacy. His secrets. His belief in me. Were mine because I earned them. Because I carried myself with dignity when the world tried to break me. My jaw tightened. The man outside spoke again, voice low and sharp. Last chance. But before he could strike the door again, another voice cut through the air. Firm. Controlled. Unmistakable. Step away from the house. Rowan. My heart surged. I looked out the window again just in time to see Rowan approaching the porch, calm, but with purpose in every step. His presence was like a blade slipping into a confrontation. The man in the coat turned. Even from inside, I could feel the tension spike. This isn't your concern, Rowan, the man said quietly.